Well, hello, everyone. Peace and blessings to you, family. I hope that you're all doing well. You all, we've had a lot of strange things happening since we last had our live session. Hopefully, you are holding on to your peace because if you just focus on all of the craziness that's going on right now, it could cause you to fret, to worry, and to lose your peace, but you should not do that. You need to hold on to your peace. I think we know that this upcoming eclipse is the trending topic right now, but it should be encouraging to us because we know that this is a message to us. The sign is to the people of the book. And what's interesting is that these folks are pretending not to know what these things mean. They know. The witnesses have been declaring that their time is up and they don't want to believe it. They believe that 45 is going to save them. And now they have a sign written across the nation. And it's obvious that they don't see it as a big deal. And that is why I say this sign is for us. It's for us to know. The significance of its meaning is to those who are looking for the sign. We now know what the sign means and what it represents, I should say. So, family, what you should be focusing on right now instead of being fearful or anxious is focus on your time of preparation. Matthew 3:12 talks about what happens when Messiah comes on the scene. He has his winnowing fan in his hand. And I talked about that, I believe it was in last month's session. He will thoroughly clean his threshing floor and gather his wheat into the barn. But we know that the chaff will be burned up. So it's a season of purification. He comes and he sets things in order. So look at your life right now and see what things need to be set in order. If we would judge our own selves, we should not be judged. And I'm not talking about you not being Israel. That's not what I'm talking about. Because remember, Israel went into the wilderness, but how many of them died there because they wanted to hold on to the ways of Egypt? So make sure you're not holding on to the ways of Babylon. So these signs should motivate you to examine yourself and your motivations for why you do certain things. It's definitely not a time for you to be in fear. You do not have to be in fear. So we're going to get started with this session because I have quite a bit to cover. I know you all are like, she always says that. But yeah, I really do. I really do. There's a lot to cover, and I will go through the comment section as we go along. So, peace and blessings to all of you who are joining me, all of you who are joining for the first session, for the first time, I should say, for a live session. Welcome to you. Welcome to you watching on the TV, wherever you're watching or listening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this because we are asking the question, was the tribe of Dan cut off? Was he cut off? Inquiring minds want to know, was the tribe of Dan cut off? And there are the question was the oh goodness, you all, my sound just went off. All right, let's go back to this. So I just heard an echo. I needed to turn that off right quick. You all give me a second. All right, now we're rearing to go. All right. So, was the tribe of Dan cut off? There are various myths proclaiming that the tribe was cut off and that Antichrist will come from the tribe of Dan. So, we want to examine scripture and historical text to see if the tribe's embrace of idolatry and immorality led to them being cut off from the nation of Israel and utter destruction, utter destruction during the last days. These are things that we want to know. So we're going to look at some things. Let's do a quick recap and pick up where I left off in the last video session. If you have not seen that session from Sunday, I really encourage you to watch that so that you can get caught up. So if you remember, both Jacob and Moses prophesied that Dan and Judah were lions' whelps. So we see that Jacob said, and of Dan, Dan is I'm sorry, this is Moses speaking here. Dan is a lion's whelp. He shall leap from Bashan. But we know that Jacob also said the same thing when he gave the prophecy about Dan. So I mentioned that a lion's whelp is referring to a young or immature lion. And it says, Dan will leap from Bashan. But Bashan was actually the portion given to Manasseh and Gad. So why are they coming from Bashan? And we covered that in the last session. The Danites did not successfully conquer all of the land that was allotted to them. They were given 18 cities, but only took 6 because the Amorites pushed back against them and pushed them into the mountains. So they didn't have enough space for all of their people. So they ended up going into this town, Laish, that was connected to Sidon, and they basically ambushed them. They took this city and then they named it after their father, Dan. Now, when we're comparing a lion and a whelp, it's essentially comparing a mature, powerful predator to a young, vulnerable animal. So, again, yes, both are lions, but one is a whelp. They're both described as being a whelp, but Judah matures into a lion. And we also know that lions are known as symbols for governance and leadership. If you think about the movie long time ago, The Lion King, even though Simba was the son of the king, he really didn't step into an effective leadership role until he matured. He had to go through some things, to mature into the lion that would become king. Judah did that. Dan did not. Dan did not. So we see here that it says, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, a viper by the path, that bites the horse's heel, so that its rider shall fall backward. Now, this is the prophecy that was given about Dan, and a serpent is normally related to monsters and sea snakes. A snake, when you think about snakes, you think about evil, you think about death and destruction. So notice that it changes from a lion's cub to Dan shall be. Dan shall be a serpent by the way. Now that's interesting. So when we think about the tribe of Dan, we see an indication here that he becomes something different. It didn't start out that way. If you remember in the session, we read that 600 men from the tribe left their appointed place and took over the city. So they started out as something, and then instead of maturing into this lion, this king, you mature into a serpent. And that is definitely not good, you all. So when we think about the Danites, these people who say they are from the tribe of Dan, we want to examine some historical texts and, as I said, biblical passages to see what it says about this tribe's embrace of adultery, to cause many to think that they've been cut off completely from the nation of Israel. So we're going to look at it, and I want you to really ponder and consider some things. You may have heard some of this already, but let's just walk through it with me, okay? Let's walk through it. So let's look at this. It's talking about the conquest of Laish. It says Dan. Following the Israelite invasion of Canaan, the southern coastal plain was allocated to the tribe of Dan. However, due to the superior weaponry of the Philistines, who used iron chariots to defend their cities, the Danites were unable to conquer this territory. While a few Danites, such as Samson's parents, because we know that Samson was also a Danite, he was from the tribe of Dan, they remained in the south. Most of the tribe turned their attention to the far north of the country and seized the Canaanite city of Lashem, or Laish, renaming it Dan. So all of them did not go. We had factions of them leaving. And as Dan was the most northerly city conquered by the Israelites, Israel stretched from Dan to Beersheba. It says extensive remains of the ancient Canaanite and Israelite cities have been excavated at Tel El Kadi, or Tel Dan, at the foot of Mount Hermon, near the largest of the four sources of the River Jordan. A huge man-made rampart encircled the Canaanite city, which was entered by a mud brick arched gateway on the eastern side. Abraham passed this Canaanite city when he rescued Lot and his family from the four kings of Mesopotamia. Now, that's the other thing that's often missed when people talk about this. Abraham went to a city called Dan. So we often only think about Laish that was renamed Dan, but there was another city named Dan. This comes from Genesis 14:13 through 15. Then one who had escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and brother of Aner, and they were allies with Abram. Now, when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his 318 trained servants who were born in his own house and went in pursuit as far as Dan. Now, we know it could not be talking about these children or this son of Jacob because he comes much later. But in the time of Abraham, there was a city named Dan. Now, theologians disagree as to whether this is the same city that was already named something else. And when it's being referred to here in Scripture, they're saying Dan so that people would have a point of reference to know this is the same place they're talking about, or there's the possibility that there was another city named Dan. So when you're researching this, you have to take that into consideration. So I hope that makes sense. But let's go on. So we're going to look at this, continue reading here. We have Hiram, who's he has found out that Solomon is king. So he says, "Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, who made heaven and earth, for he has given King David a wise son, endowed with prudence and understanding, who will build a temple for the Most High and a royal house for himself. And now I have sent a skillful man endowed with understanding, Huram, my master craftsman." Listen, "the son of a woman of the daughters of Dan, and his father was a man of Tyre." So this man was skillful. He was a craftsman. He worked with gold and silver and bronze, stone and wood. So Hiram sent this man to Solomon. Now, why are we reading this? So that you can see that, yes, the tribe of Dan did connect with the other nations. They blend, a lot of them blended in with them. We see here that this woman, it says she is a daughter of Dan, but her son's father is a man of Tyre. And if you read it in the Septuagint, it's saying that Tyre, this king of Tyre, answered Solomon in writing. And he sent this message to Solomon saying, again, because the Most High loved his people, he has made you king. And it says, "I'm sending you this wise and understanding man who belonged to Hiram, my father." And this man's mother was one of the daughters of Dan, and his father is a Tyrian. Let's go on and look at it in another passage here in 1 Kings 7. It reads a bit differently. It says, "Now King Solomon sent and brought Huram from Tyre. He was of the son of a woman, of a widow from the tribe of Naphtali." Now, in the previous verse, it says she was of the tribe of Dan. But we still see here that his father was a man of Tyre. So if you read it without the understanding, it could be, okay, well, which is it? Is this woman from Naphtali, or is she of the tribe of Dan? But again, we see the mingling here of the races. So let's read this to bring some understanding. This is from Cambridge Bible for Schools and Colleges. So it says, "He was a widow's son." The Hebrew says the son of a widow woman, and there's no reason why the literal expression should be relegated to the margin. So it says he's called the son of a woman of the daughters of Dan. The two may be reconciled if we suppose the woman to have belonged to Dan and her first husband to have been of the tribe of Naphtali. So if you look at it in our situation here, we're here, because I see some of the comments from the last video where some say, well, how can the Ethiopian Jews be Israelites? Ethiopia is a son of Ham. They belong to the Cushites. So if you think about us being here, if things are written about us years from now, we would be described now as Americans. We're from America. We live here in the United States. But is that our true origin? Is that where we started? Is that our true heritage? No, we're Israelites. So, in the same sense, this is what this is saying. She married into another tribe and they moved into this area where she now joined in with this man from Tyre, and she had this son by him. But she's a daughter of Dan, living in the area of Naphtali. Now let's go on. So, were the Danites cut off from the nation of Israel? That's the question, we really want to know. Put a yes in the chat if you have heard that yes, they've been cut off. They're no longer a part of the nation. Put a yes in the chat. Let's see. How many yeses? Okay, so we're getting some yeses. Shaya, yes. Brother Calvin, yes. Vita's child, a lot of yeses. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so we're going to look at some things. Let's look at this from Encyclopedia of the Bible. The conquest of Laish in the time of the judges apparently was followed by the gradual removal from there of many or most of the tribe. Although there is nothing concerning this in the Bible, so we're talking about the tribe of Dan, remember? Samson was a Danite, and in his day, there were many Danites still living in the portion assigned to them by Joshua. So it talks about these cities: Zorah, Eshtaol, Timnah, Eltekeh, and Ekron. These were Danite cities. Although the last was in the days of Samson, one of the 5 cities of the lords of the Philistines, and others were more or less under their control. So we understand that from the information that was presented. But we have those who say because Dan is not listed in the genealogy of First Chronicle, and they're not listed in Revelation, this is telling us that they are no longer a part of Israel. So this is what we really want to look at and examine these things to see if it's really true. We want to look at Scripture and let Scripture interpret itself, right? Let Scripture interpret itself. So here is something that is often overlooked when we talk about the tribes. And this story is found in 2 Chronicles 11. Many of you may be familiar with this passage. We're going to read this. For the Levites left their suburbs and their possession and came to Judah and Jerusalem, for Jeroboam and his sons had cast them off from executing the priest's office unto the Most High. And he ordained him priests for the high places and for the devils. Do you all remember seeing this? That Jeroboam ordained his own priests for the high places and for the devils. Yeah, it's right there. And for the calves which he had made. And after them, out of all the tribes of Israel, such as set their hearts to seek the Most High Yah of Israel, came to Jerusalem to sacrifice unto the Most High Yah of their fathers. If you read this without the background information, you will have no clue what this is talking about. You really have to dig into this passage to understand what this means. So I'm going to give you a summary of the backstory so that you understand the significance of what is being said here. We're going to begin with Solomon. Solomon became an idolater. Most of you know that. If you read 1 Kings 11, he was judged because of this. And the Most High said he would take the kingdom from him and give it to his servant. And he was also going to raise up adversaries against Solomon. Now, the servant he was referring to was Jeroboam, who was an Ephraimite. Keep that thought in mind. So the Most High said, because of David, the Most High said, for David's sake, he would not take all of the tribes from Solomon, and he would do it after Solomon died. So you can see he received grace because of his father, David. So this was pushed back so that these things would happen after Solomon died. And he said he would not take all of them from him. So the contention began actually before Solomon's death, but the split happened after, when the tribes wanted Rehoboam, who was Solomon's son, to lessen the tax burden that Solomon had placed on them. But this son of Solomon refused. So 10 tribes, the northern tribes, rebelled. They left, and they made Jeroboam, this Ephraimite, who was a servant, king over them. How many tribes left, family? 10. 10. So Judah, Benjamin, and some of the Levites remained in the kingdom of Judah. And I'm telling you all of this because it's pertinent to our question about the Danites. So Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, and Jeroboam, this Ephraimite, were the kings ruling over the divided kingdom. Now, listen. Solomon's son was a seed of David. He was the king of Judah in the south. You can read this in 1 Kings 11. Jeroboam was an Ephraimite of the seed of Joseph. He was the king in the north, but he was one of the officers, one of the Solomon's officers, and this is where it gets interesting. King Rehoboam, Solomon's son, wanted to fight against the northern tribes that seceded to bring them back under him. But the Most High stopped him. He sent a word and said, don't go up against your brother. This is of my doing. I hope you caught that. In essence, let them secede. This is of my doing. I don't want you to fight against your brother. Rehoboam listened and abandoned the plan to go to war. But then Jeroboam used deception to try to hold on to the 10 tribes. How did he do it? He knew that the people would have to go to Jerusalem to worship during the feast days. And he thought the people would turn away from following him and go after Rehoboam if they started going to Jerusalem or continue going to Jerusalem. So he decided to set up these places of worship in Bethel and Dan. Don't miss that. Bethel belonged to the tribe of Ephraim. And he set up the other one in Dan. So 2 different places of worship. And he told the people, hey, look, it's too far for you all to travel all the way to Jerusalem for the feast days. Look, I've made this calf for you. You can worship this calf because this is the God that brought you out of Egypt. Yes, that is what he told them. This calf that we just made is the God that brought you out of Egypt, family. I mean, when you read that, it's your mouth just drops. It's like, what did he say? So, yes, this is what he did. Now, if you remember from the last video, I talked about Dan being the first tribe once they entered the promised land to set up their own gods and priests. The faction that left the promised land and went to Laish or Lashem set up their own order or governing authority. Jeroboam has now done the same thing. This king from the tribe of Ephraim would also set up their own governing authority. He set up their priests and gave them a god. And of course, he set in place his own priests. So hopefully that summary, for those who may not be familiar with the story, was enough to get you caught up. And I need you to understand that, because what you see happening is him putting this demand on the people to worship this fake deity, this pagan god. I don't want y'all going to Jerusalem. You know you're supposed to go there, but no, you stay here and you worship this God. Listen to this from Psalm 78, 67 through 68. Moreover, he, speaking of the Most High, rejected the tent of Joseph and did not choose the tribe of Ephraim, but chose the tribe of Judah, Mount Zion, which he loved. The kingly tribe, the tribe that the kings were supposed to come through after David, should have followed that same line. But now we have Jeroboam of a totally different tribe ruling as king. And the Most High is saying, I did not choose the tribe of Ephraim. And if you read Hosea 7 and Hosea 8, you will see what the Most High says about them. He's basically saying they set up kings, but not by me. They made princes, but I did not acknowledge them. And all of the kings of Israel in the northern kingdom were evil. Every last one of them were totally wicked. So when we look at Dan and Ephraim, they use their position of leadership to lead the people into idolatry and paganism and away from Yah. Now, again, for those who would say, well, that's what they did in the wilderness, that's what Aaron did. I'm talking about what happened after they entered the promised land with the law, statutes, and commandments. These two, Dan and Ephraim, or I should say Dan and Jeroboam from the tribe of Ephraim. This is what they did. So it's like a bitter root that's been planted, and the people are harmed because they are then given the fruit to eat. And leaders, it's a very dangerous thing to use your position to lead people into sin and idolatry. Did the other tribes fall into idolatry at some point? Yes, they did. But if you study this out, apparently the originator of the thing receives a harsher punishment. And this is going to be a key point for you to remember as I go on. So now let's go back to 2 Chronicles 11, 13, 16. This is key. So after Jeroboam set up that calf and told the people they didn't have to go to Jerusalem anymore to worship, and he told them it was this calf here that we made that brought you out of Egypt. I'm just like, wow, you don't fear the Most High. But now let's read this so that you'll understand what it's talking about. And the priests and the Levites that were in all Israel resorted to him out of their coasts. What is it talking about? The priests and the Levites who were in Israel under Jeroboam, after they found out what he did, left. They left. They left their suburbs and their possession, and they went to Judah and Jerusalem. And not only that, they really didn't have much of a choice there, because Jeroboam and his sons had said, yeah, you all cannot execute the office of the priesthood anymore, because I have my own priests. I've put them in your position. So he ordained his own priests for the high places, is what it's saying, and for the devils and for the calves which he had made. So these Levites left. But guess what? And after them, out of all the tribes of Israel, such as set their hearts to seek the Most High of Israel, came to Jerusalem to sacrifice unto the Most High of their fathers. When some of the people saw the Levites and the priests leave, they packed up and they left as well. What does it say in verse 16? Some out of all the tribes of Israel. All. So out of all the 10 tribes who were in the northern region, a remnant left, and they came unto the house of Judah. They joined themselves unto the house of Judah. That is an important point that you have to get and you have to understand. You have to get that. So we understand then, as a result, there's a remnant who were in the land of Judah. Now let's read this from 2nd Esdras 13, 40 through 50. Well, I'm just going to read 40. Those are the 10 tribes which are carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Osei the king, when Salmanasar, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. So we know later that the northern tribes would be carried away into captivity. But how many? 10. So all 10. Those are the 10 tribes. He took 10, but remember, this is what I need you to get. A portion from all 10 of those tribes had already packed up and left. So by the time they were taken away, there were those who belonged to those tribes who were living in Judah. So if it says those from 10 tribes, wouldn't that include some of the people from Dan? You can put a yes there if you're getting this. Now, this is why we see verses like this in the New Testament, Luke 2:36, where it says, there was one Anna, a prophetess, the daughter of Phanuel of the tribe of Asher. That's why she was living there in the land of Judah, or with the other people who belonged to the house of Judah, because a lot of them left and they remained. They came under the protection, under the covering, per se, of the house of Judah. They left their house and they joined with the house of Judah. Hopefully this is making sense to you. Now, another thing that we can look at from James 1:1. James sends this message to the 12 tribes. James, a bondservant of Yah and of Yeshua, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad. Now, if Dan had been completely cut off, why is James writing to 12 tribes who are scattered? It says 12, not 11, 12. Are you getting this? I'm trying to walk us through this so that we can see some things. So they were scattered, but why were they scattered? They were scattered because of the persecution coming against them. And it says, and Saul was consenting unto his death, and at that time there was a great persecution against the assembly which was at Jerusalem, and they were all scattered abroad throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria, except the apostles. So the only ones to remain in Jerusalem were the apostles. The other people ran. They left because the persecution was so heavy. Look at verse 4. Therefore, they that were scattered abroad went everywhere preaching the word. So they went outside, and that was the commission. That was the commandment given to them by Messiah. They were supposed to take the gospel and spread it, go out and spread the good news. All right, hopefully you're understanding this. So we know that this happened because if you remember, Timothy's mother was a Yehudi. His father was Greek, right? Now, let's look at this in Ezekiel 27:19 through 20. Dan and Javan paid for your wares. The passage is talking about the king of Tyre. It's saying Dan and Javan paid for your wares, traversing back and forth. Wrought iron, cassia, and cane were among your merchandise. Listen, Dan was your merchant in saddlecloths for riding. So this is showing us that we already knew that Dan joined himself with some of the other nations, right? The woman was a daughter of Dan. Her son was a son of a man from Tyre. So when you read Ezekiel 27, the Most High is speaking to the king of Tyre, and it's talking about Dan pairing up with Javan. Well, who in the world is Javan? Javan was a son of Japheth, descended from Japheth. They are said to be the forefathers of the Greeks, the Ionians, one of the first Greek nations. So now we see Dan connected, proof here in scripture that he connected himself with the Greeks. And we know that the Danites were seafarers. So that should not be surprising that they were traveling to other parts of the world and doing business with other merchants. But they were mixing with them, this faction that moved away from the house, or I should say from Laish. When they moved to Laish, this area in Bashan, they started mingling with the people who were living there. And we know that they were seafarers, right? But Javan is one of the ones mentioned that they were traveling with. So then this passage from John 7:33 through 35 confirms that our people lived among them. Messiah said to them, I shall be with you a little while longer, and then I go to him who sent me. You will seek me and not find me, and where I am, you cannot come. Then the Yehudis said among themselves, where does he intend to go that we shall not find him? Does he intend to go to the dispersion among the Greeks and teach the Greeks? So some of our people lived among the Greeks. When the northern kingdom, when they were cut off, they started mixing and mingling and joining themselves with these other nations. But Dan was doing a lot more than that. He was involved in the business and the merchandise and, yeah, getting himself involved in a lot of things. Let's look at this from Ezekiel 27:12 through 15. All right, still talking to this king of Tyre. Tarshish was thy merchant by reason of the multitude of all kinds of riches. With silver, iron, tin, and lead, they traded in thy fairs. And we see Javan being named again, Tubal and Meshech. Who are these folks? Descendants of Japheth. They were thy merchants. They traded, listen, the persons of men. Talking about slave trade. They were engaging in the trafficking of men. Now, the first one name is Javan. And who did Dan pair himself up with? Javan, the Greeks. Remember the passage in Joel 3? You sold them to the Greeks. We see a connection here. Listen to verse 14. Well, I'll go on. They were trading the persons of men and vessels of brass in thy market. They of the house of Togarmah traded in thy fairs with horses and horsemen and mules. The men of Dedan were thy merchants. Many isles were the merchandise of thine hand. Listen, they brought thee for a present horns of ivory and ebony. So where do you think that came from, family? Which continent? Horns of ivory and ebony? I think you know, right? I think you know. So yes, Dan hooked up with the children of Japheth. And we can see that they were involved in the trafficking of men. And we can also see that they were merchandising things from Africa. So let's look at some passages where they are not listed, because this is the argument of many saying this is proof that they were cut off because they are not listed in First Chronicles 4 through 8, where it lists the other tribes. And I need you to walk through this with me so that you can see what's going on here. If you look at First Chronicles 2, 1 through 4, and I left the heading here, it's naming the family of Israel. These were the sons of Israel: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Joseph, Benjamin, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. He is listed there with the family of Israel, his sons. And then notice that Reuben is in first when it starts naming these heads of households. The first one name is Judah. It lists Judah, and then it will list his sons and then their descendants. So we see a genealogy here. And I'm not going to go through all of them. It would take a lot of time to do that. You're definitely welcome to read this on your own. So we see first the family of Jacob, or Israel. Dan is listed there. And then it begins to list these sons. Now, notice that it lists the family of Ephraim. So it lists the sons of Ephraim, and then it names them. And I'm putting that one there for a reason. Just keep going along with me. Who are these people? All of those who were named, based on 1 Chronicles 8:28, these were heads of the fathers' houses by their generations, chief men. Chief men. So we have a listing of those who are still seen as heads of a father's house. But here's what I need you to understand. They are listed as heads of a father's house, but they all are falling under the house of Judah at this time. The house of Judah. All right. Now look at First Chronicles 4:41. These recorded by name came in the days of Hezekiah, king of Judah. So this is when they took the census. It was in the days of Hezekiah, king of Judah. And they attacked their tents. So we see they were taking the census because they had skirmishes and uprisings going on. So they were listing these heads of the households, or I don't want you to think as individual houses. I want you to think of it in terms of heads of tribes. That's the best way to think about it. Heads of tribes. This was done in the days of Hezekiah. Now, I need you to see this, and this is important. If you read 1 Chronicles 27:16-22, it then talks about these leaders of tribes. It says, furthermore, over the tribes of Israel, the officer over the Reubenites. So now they're listing officers over these tribes. So they list the Reubenites, then the Simeonites. They list the Levites. They list Aaronites. They list Judah, Issachar, Zebulon, Naphtali. They list Ephraim. They list Manasseh. They list Benjamin. And look at verse 22. A leader is placed over Dan. Do you see that? So what's happening here? They moved out of their place. They went and set up their own government. The leaders approved that. Even though there were remnants left, they were no longer in their place. They joined themselves to the Gentiles. So for the remnant who remain, a leader is placed over them. It says these were the leaders of the tribes of Israel. You need to get that important point because it will tie in to what we're going to cover next. Hopefully you all are getting that. And I totally forgot about going back to look at comments. Let's see what some of you are saying. Totally forgot about it. You all, when I get going, it's like, okay. So hopefully, again, you're understanding. Byron says, over Dan. Interesting. Yes. So it's almost like now you have a surrogate father or parent. All right. So Glenda, you said you got it. Good. So are you all getting this? Is it making sense? Are you seeing how these things fit together? KT says Dan alienated themselves from the other tribes. All right. Vita's child says, got it. Let's keep going. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So let's keep going. Now, I want to look at this from Ezekiel 48. Go back to where you were. Let's look at this from Ezekiel 48, 30-5. These are the exits of the city. Ezekiel is given a vision of what is going to come in the end times. And you'll see that a lot of this is connected or tied into what we see in Revelation. These are the exits of the city when we get our new city. On the north side, measuring 4,000, and then it begins to list the tribes. It says, the gates of the city shall be named after the tribes of Israel. So it lists the 3 gates, and it says one for Reuben, one for Judah, one for Levi on the east. You're going to see one for Joseph, one for Benjamin, one for Dan. One for Dan, family. He's still listed there. He has a gate for all of you who know the meaning of that. He gets a gate because, and well, I won't get in, I'll walk you through it. Like I said, I don't want to get ahead of myself. So if you read the rest of it, you will see the other tribes listed there. Let's go on. Revelation 21, 10 through 12. And he carried me away in the spirit to a great and high mountain and showed me the great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from Yah, having the glory of Yah. Her light was like a most precious stone, like a jasper stone, clear as crystal. Also she had a great and high wall with the 12 gates. Did it say 11? 11? No. So we have 12 gates and 12 angels at the gates and names written on them, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. Did it say 11 tribes? It said 12. 12 means 12. Dan has a gate. This is coming from Revelation. But in Revelation 7, this is the one where folks are all up in arms. It's like, but see, Dan is not listed in Revelation 7, where we see there would be 12,000 coming from tribes, certain tribes. And it lists, you see Judah listed first, then Reuben. So you have the 12,000 who were sealed. But if you go back and read the beginning of that chapter, it's telling you that these will be leaders who will have a specific assignment, and they're listed as of the tribe because they will be over a house. I hope you get that. They will be over a house, as in leadership, but they have a specific assignment. So when we are divided, once we leave this place, we will all belong to a house, a family. And who will be the head of the house? The men that is listed there, it says those men, it says men who were not given unto women, so virgins. They have a specific work assignment that they will be doing with Messiah in the last days. Leadership. Why isn't Dan listed? Because someone else was placed over him. For the remnant from his tribe who will be left, they still have their inheritance, and you're going to see that. I'm going to show that to you. But for this position, head of household, over a house. Now, for those who are saying, well, it's only 144,000 that's going to be saved, that is the most ridiculous. It's like, would you please just read the rest of the book? I mean, just think about who's under the altar and where it says the multitudes who are there. Come on, family. It has to be more than 144,000. No, the 12,000, these men are appointed as in a leadership role a leadership position that they are going to be responsible for. Notice that Ephraim isn't there either, but Manasseh is. Joseph is listed, and many say, well, that's Ephraim. No, it lists Joseph. So it's talking about Manasseh and that remnant from Joseph, the house of Joseph, that still remains from Ephraim. Ephraim did the same thing Dan did. Are you seeing this? Are you seeing this? I hope so. So there's a reason why the Most High is doing, order is of extreme importance to him. So we see it listed the way that it should be. They will be heads of houses, men. I mean, I've heard different things there. Men, the Father's house. We will all be joining to a Father's house. All right, let's keep going. So there are some marks that theologians and scholars talk about to show how Dan really, mixed in with the other nations to a certain extent. He looked almost like Esau when you compare some of how some of the ways Esau blended and mixed himself in with the other nation. Well, the same thing happened with Dan, but a remnant remains. So they call these things Dan's waymarks. Like whenever Dan would go and take over a city, they would name it after their father, and they would add the name of Dan so that they could be identified as being there. These are the Danites. So these scholars say you can look all over Europe and the British Isles and find these marks. And this is them saying, well, see, these Europeans and these British people are really Danites, until you remember that the original Europeans were all dark melanated people. Okay. We know that the current people, the new people, that something happened not long ago. They joined in and came over and took over those areas. Let's keep going. So they say, well, the way that you identify Dan is you look for cities, towns, areas where you see Don or Donettes or Danube, Dynester. Whenever, I mean, in one, it was like Scandinavia, because you see DIN in Scandinavia. The tribe of Dan were there. These are Danites. Or Sardinia. Now, what's interesting to me is how in the heck do you forget or overlook a name like Sudan? If this is the marker that we should be looking for, if we should look at Denmark and say those are the Danites, how in the heck are you going to skip right over Sudan? And this is why we cannot rely on these people to teach us scripture, because they will always put themselves there and erase us out of it. It's about them. It's not about us. So they have, you can Google this, various places, Sweden, that's supposed to be bearing Dan's name. So now they say, oh yeah, these people are Israelites, because They have Dan there. Okay, well, then you need to use that same criteria for people in Sudan, wouldn't you think? You can't make this stuff up. Now look at this. Hippolytus says that the Antichrist at the end of time will derive from one of the 12 tribes of Israel, namely from the tribe of Dan. And they're using the markers of the prophecy about he will be a serpent in the way. And they're saying his moniker, the symbol that identifies this tribe is the serpent, the seal of the serpent. So, but look at this. First John 2:18 told us that you have heard that the Antichrist is coming. But it says there are many antichrists, even now. It says, even now, many antichrists have come, by which we know that it is the last hour. They went out from us, but they were not of us. So we can't just say, oh, this one tribe, this is Antichrist. It says, no, there are many Antichrists. It's those who will not accept or receive Messiah. We have a group of people in the land now pretending to be us. You go over there talking about Messiah. They will show you who they really are. That's them. But listen here to what Moses said, because I believe this sets the record straight. Numbers 36:5-7. Then Moses commanded the children of Israel according to the word of the Most High, saying, what the tribe of the sons of Joseph speaks is right. This is what the Most High commands concerning the daughters of Zelophehad. You all, I know I probably messed that up. Let them marry whom they think best, but they may marry only within the family of their father's tribe. Why? So the inheritance of the children of Israel shall not change hands from tribe to tribe. For every one of the children of Israel shall keep the inheritance of the tribe of his fathers. The Danites who remain, they still will have their inheritance. It can't be transferred to another tribe. It most certainly will not be transferred to the Gentiles. If it's not going to be given to another Israelite tribe, why would it be given to the Gentiles? So that's why you still see them listed there. But as for the leadership role over a house, they are not named. You don't see them represented in that role. So again, the reason they're not listed there is because of their acts, their leading the people, being one of the first tribes to lead the people into idolatry and setting up their own government, family, basically saying, well, we're going to create our own God. We have our own priests. We're basically going to do things our way and not Yah's way. And Jeroboam was the first of the tribe of Ephraim to do the exact same thing. The exact same thing. So you tell me, you put it in the chat, whether or not you still think the tribe of Dan has been completely cut off from the nation of Israel. And then we'll look at some of the other comments to see what you all are talking about. All right. Vita's child. Hmm. The whole truth, so help me, Yah. Even when we turn into pigs, the Most High stays steadfast and true. Oh my goodness. Isn't that His grace? I'm telling you, that is His grace. I'm telling you. Praises to the Most High Yah for that. Yes. So Glenda, right, which that promise was made as a covenant with the tribes. That's right. That's right. I mean, we were given the covenant and the promises before we sinned. And if you look at some of the things that some of the other tribes did, I mean, some of the things that Judah did, you know, it was just as bad. But as I said earlier, based on what I'm seeing, the initiator of wickedness, they seem to be judged more harshly because it's like they are planting that seed. They are planting the seed. So, Ray, Chantel, they weren't responsible enough to lead. Privacy, there are Bantu tribes today where daughters inherit and not just sons. Yes, because based on that covenant agreement, it's not supposed to leave out of that tribe. Now, it's hard for us to kind of determine that now because most of us can't say exactly, well, yes, I mean, I know for sure I'm from Benjamin or I'm from Levi, it's et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to have to rely on the Most High to place us in our rightful place because that inheritance, even though it's been centuries, that inheritance still belongs to us. It belongs to us. We are the rightful owners. So Stacy says, not cut off. So I'm seeing a lot of no's. Yo, Bob, everybody got chastised. We know that we did. We know that we did. And there are people on the continent of Africa. They call themselves now, and I'm probably going to mess up the pronunciation, the Gadangnis. It's like a blend of Gad and Dan, and that's who they say they are. They say they are from Gad and the tribe of Dan. So we do know that a remnant left. A remnant did leave. And when we got caught up in everything that happened to us after 70 AD, those tribes that joined themselves unto the house of Judah, they got caught up as well. They got cut off as well. All right, so yes, Lizette says, I don't think so. Yah is so merciful. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Did Dan get caught up in some things? Yes, he did. Yes, he did, but there's a price to pay for that. Just like we paid a price. Charla, I never understood why Dan was not included in Revelations. I didn't either. It's like, yeah, when I first heard it, I mean, in Christian church, that's what you hear. Well, they were totally cut off. They no longer belong to Israel. So, let's see. J, for Dan to still be included, y'all, is definitely a forgiving. Yes, he is. Yes. Shaya, when he said he'll gather all his children, he meant all. Yes, absolutely. All right. Praises to Yah, Sister Cece. Praises to the Most High Yah. Let's see, the real up next in Psalm 89. The Most High said he's not breaking the covenant, and he didn't. We can see that he has been faithful to his word. I mean, this is proof. He is faithful to his word. Chosen daughter of Zion says the grace and mercy of Yah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Chris Black is talking about they are not a people. They come from Neanderthals and Denisovans, which are not humans. I think you all know who he's referring to right there. The real up next. The daughters inherit if there are no sons. That's exactly right, to keep it in the tribe. And they had to marry somebody from that tribe. Let's go on, read some more comments here. Alma Miller says, yes, ma'am, I'm so grateful for Yah's grace. So am I. I'm telling you. So am I. Privacy, we're more than mixed. I think we're more mixed than not. Yeah. I mean, and it was forced, on a lot of our people. So just think about what I covered with Jeroboam. Jeroboam, he was the ruler, the king. And he was basically trying to force them to turn to this pagan god he had made. And the Levites are like, we're out of here. Well, I mean, I don't know that they had a choice. I believe if they had stayed, he would have had them executed, to tell you the truth. But they set a great example. They left and they went and joined themselves unto the house of Judah. And the people who had the right heart toward the Most High, they packed up and like, we're with you. We're not staying here. Let's see. William says Dan is an original Viking. Yes, he made it. I read through some documents referring to him as, oh gosh, the name just went through my mind. The 300, you all know the group that I'm talking about, the fierce fighters. I just lost it. But that group from the movie 300, I've seen different sources saying that they were Danites, and some that said they were Danites, and some from Simeon. So, hey, yeah, got to check it out. Let's see. Who else we got? L. Nathan. That's why I don't go with the chart. Well, Josephine, I told y'all that's why Judah kept putting foot to behind on Dan. Yeah. Yes. Let's see. The real up next. True, we got hammered, but the Gentiles, our captors, are getting double. Unimaginable. Look, you're right. I can't imagine what that's going to be like either, you all. Puchna. Dan led a lot of Israel into idolatry. Yes, he did. All praises to the Most High, Ray Chantel. All praises to his name. Let's see. Queen Mommy says, at the real, yes, I'm scared for them. Yeah, but you all, they just go on about their merry way. Like, yeah, we know we did it, but hey, we're America. We got it like that. We're special like that. We're special like that. So just going to go through a few more of these. Let's see. That's it. The Spartans. That's who I was thinking of. Yes. Yes. I saw some information about them being the Spartans. But again, look who they teamed up with, the Phoenicians. Just think about it. The real. You said it's in the Maccabees and Josephus. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Glenda says, hopefully Dan still has that serpent bite for our enemies. Well. Oh, yes. Yes, let's see. Esther, I believe there's a poem about those 300 warriors. Okay, I haven't heard about that. The whole truth, so help me, the tribe of Dan made a conscious decision to mix with other nations and follow their ways. I think Judas came from the tribe of Dan. He was Edom. Judas was Edom. Let's see. Melanated by Yah, many of them have no remorse. No, they don't. No, they don't think that they did anything wrong. That's why. They don't think they did anything wrong. Saw the Gentiles are living in their salvation now. They truly believe they are untouchable. Yes. That's exactly what it is, old McMoney. The Gentile says we find ourselves not guilty. Not guilty. We did the deed, but hey, we are not guilty. Let's see. KT, yes, there is a lost book. And I just, I read through some information from that book today, actually, for those who are interested in reading it. It's called the Testaments of the 12 Patriarchs. And if you read through it, almost like how Jacob gave a prophetic word to his sons before he died. Well, in that book, there's a word from Dan to his sons saying that I know that you all are going to turn in the last days. So for others who may be interested in reading that, that's where you would find that. It's called the, what did I say now? The Testaments of the 12 Patriarchs. You can find that information there. But thank you for sharing that as well. All right, Shaya, we really got fed tonight. The tribe of Dan had really been racking my mind as to how they were written at the end. So, yeah, that, and when we look at this tribe, these Beta Israel, who say they are from the tribe of Dan, and they make their connection to Solomon, saying that they traveled with Menelik to go back to the mother's homeland. Based on this information, I don't see why that couldn't be true, because we see, as I read tonight, different passages where Solomon was making connections with Tyre and Hiram, etc. These are the same folks that Dan had hooked up with and made connections with. So I don't see why that would be impossible. Don't see why it would be impossible. Queen Mommy, in the seal portions, it says that America is the, okay. Well, then you all may want to read that. Let's see. Praises to the Most High, Uchiaya. I hope I said that right. I hope yeah, that is true, Obadiah. When you look at Greek pottery from that time period, you do see the Spartans depicted as black. But again, even with Spain, if we remember, all of those people, the original people, they have a dark hue. So be beautiful. Not all of the Ethiopians claim to be Dan. That's the thing you need to consider. Not all. It was this sect, this faction who were there, the Philoshes. They say that they are from the tribe of Dan. And it's just, I mean, they call them Ethiopian Jews because that's where they live now. They live in Ethiopia. But just like we're called Americans, it's not where we originated from. Okay? All right, a few more and then we're going to wrap up because I know some folks probably need coffee right about now. Chris says, Testament of Naphtali also shows that Bilhah and Zilpah were of the same stock of Jacob. Okay, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I do read a lot of those books, but some you have to kind of, really examine and look like, I don't know that I'm going to go with this one. This one's not lining up with a lot of things, so I'll pass on it. But some of them you can see that it's lining up with what you have in the 66. So let's see. The real up next. Rumor is Solomon sent some from each tribe and Levites to Ethiopia. He and David set up colonies in Ethiopia and Egypt and deep into Africa, according to Josephus. I did not know that. Did not hear about that part. Okay. Let's see. Brother Charles, the original people of Europe did not have. That's exactly right. So, yeah, I mean, it tells you who they are. It tells you, praises to Yahvita's child. Yeah, I did a session on the Yamnaya. That's who they be. You all know what I mean. That's who they are. No worries, Matt. You can go back and start from the beginning. All right. So, family, I am going to wrap that up. I hope that it was easy to understand. There was so much to cover. You all, if I had shared all of the resources, we would be here until 1 or 2 o'clock this morning. So I had to condense it all and just cover the main points for you to get the understanding of what happened. So go back and read those scriptures on your own. Meditate and pray about those things. And I believe what we see happening is the Most High being true to his word concerning the tribe of Dan. If you think about it, family, really, we're remnants. If you want to think about it that way, we're really remnants that were left because all of our people did not leave. When Messiah says, when you see Jerusalem surrounded, get out, leave. So the fact that you're here, you know who you are now, is a testament to your ancestors leaving. So a remnant got out, a remnant. So if you look at it that way, a remnant from that tribe remains. But as for this special assignment that's going to be given to the 144,000, they do not take part in that. So, all right, family, be blessed, you all. Please share these messages. And if you have not hit the like button, go ahead and do that right now for me. And the other thing is, many of you sent so many questions, like from the last video that I uploaded on Sunday. I'm hoping that I answered some of those questions in this. If I had the time to just sit and answer and respond to all those questions and questions that come in through emails, etc., family, that's a full-time job. So I'm hoping that I was able to cover some of those questions for those who were asking. I think the main one from Sunday was um, not seeing how the Ethiopian Jews could be Israel, since the Ethiopians are not descended from Shem. And again, don't focus on the location, because just like we are in this location and we're classified a certain way, it's not our origins. It's not telling us who we really are. So, not all Ethiopia, just a sect, a faction, a portion. And with our people, when we ran out or when we ran into those different areas in Africa, we mixed in with the Hamites. So a lot of our people are there thinking they're one thing, even to this day, but they are descendants from the tribe of Israel. So those of us who are scattered as well. So all right, so I hope that answered your question, family. Be blessed and join me next time.